Hi, Lisa. All right. I'm excited. I'm gonna. Hi, Lisa. Share real quick. All right. I'm excited. I'm gonna. Okay. Looks like we're still getting a few more people in. I feel like there's 18 people, about 20 to 30 people signed up. So let's wait around, if you don't mind, just a minute or two, 12:05, and I'll just begin my beginning thoughts. It's exciting, more people are joining. Okay. So I think I'll keep adding people as they come in and keep a lookout. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hello. I'm Zeina Baltagi, and I'm the current artist in residence for 1111, a creative collective. 1111 ACC is a nonprofit organization based out of the San Fernando Valley that focuses on providing integrated and accessible arts programming through community events, public art exhibitions, and education. This programming is sponsored in part by the Department of Cultural Affairs, Los Angeles, and please visit www.1111acc.org for more information about 1111 and to check out the other upcoming discussions after today. And I would love to introduce you, wonderful friends and colleagues and artists and performers, Ron Athey and Arshia Fatima. Ron is tuning in from San Francisco and Arshia from Los Angeles. And I'm really, really excited for the conversation that's about to happen today. We're going to be talking about our relationship with media through time and the public made private, essentially, and private public, that all feelings that reside within that. So yeah. I would love to share a screen with you, and I'm going to kick off the conversation by referring to Nomad Magazine, early works from Ron Athey. Does everyone see my screen well? Cool. I hope I'm sharing properly and I'm only sharing the image, right?
It's proper.
It's proper. Okay. Cool. So yeah. Um, so this is really early work for me when you were transitioning your thoughts and your writings into real performance, like performance conceptualized work. And this is with your partner, right? At the time.
Should I launch into this?
Just launch right in. I can't hear you very well, so let's get a little closer to the mic.
On an old laptop. This work is from 1981 called Premature Ejaculation. We did 2 live shows in Pomona, where we're both from. And Bruce Kalberg, who ran this magazine, No Magazine, invited us to do a performance for camera. The I guess context of that magazine was basically a music magazine on the LA scene, which is mostly early punk bands from the late 70s. But it also ran reviews of body artists like Gina Pane, Carolee Schneeman, the Kipper Kids. So they, wanted to kind of foster a movement by covering people that were just starting to make work as well. And I guess kind of significantly, these were shot by a fashion photographer. They were a bit slicker than the work looked live. And it was based on kind of the resonance of the actionists, like Herman Nietzsche performed in LA, Home Transmissions performed in LA, Johanna Went with her local, playing with hardcore bands or at arty punky clubs. There's genres that are hard to describe, but they all get umbrellas under punk. But and the writing, me and Ross had a very connected relationship where we wrote together. We did cut up writing together, automatic writing together. So it's kind of a cycle of life concept through cut up and marriage and birth and abortion. The right to life movement was very aggressive in this era with horrific pamphlets.
Yeah.
So that was how I started making work. 40 years ago.
Yeah. Would you like for me to pull up some other work here?
Let me move through that. But first, I want to say that in terms of surveillance or mainstreaming, that was invisible at this time. So underground, whether it was music or art, had its place. No one ever tried to steal it, borrow from it. Sometimes now I want to put a no stylists or art directors allowed sign at the door because everything goes to the top 5 pop divas.
Yeah.
Involved in it. So if I'm paranoid of surveillance, it's more from the industry than from the government.
Yeah, you don't want Lady Gaga jacking your shit.
And then you become obsolete. like Orlan's point was, now my bumps are the Lady Gaga thing, which is on the food. It's a point, and it cheapens it. I don't know. I'm not very into popular culture, so it's not worth it to me for someone to lose my thing. I will, like a parallel thing for me is the time of the culture wars and my interest in writing and kind of taking control with journalism. The LA Weekly, then I worked there for 18 years as the assistant to the editor in chief, and I had a certain amount of freelance writing duties as well as these calendar previews. So someone would come to LA for the first time, like Penny Arcade. So I'd write a few paragraphs about that. So I kind of made it my job to try to contextualize um, performance art or underground art or experimental film. I had different different interests there.
Yeah.
So being in the paper, by the time I did this performance at the Walker Art Center, which I think you have a richness of clips from,
Yeah. Um,
I thought more like a journalist. I didn't think, oh, I'm being attacked by 200 newspapers at once, and Jesse Helms hates me. I have like credible material from that era. Um, Luckily, I went to the UK, which then I got this treatment in Scotland, but I always received it with humor. And recently, when I found this clip again, I made a T-shirt from it. It's been a hit in my web shop. I think, yeah, I think it's rare to have that real understanding of the media. Even a critical review that's non-productive, I know how to like put it away because I know what critics are like. Movie critics see 10 movies in a row and hate everything. People just want to make their own point, so I don't let it wreck me or crash me. On the other hand, there's very smart writing that will actually help me understand what my work is saying. So that I bemoan how few real cultural journalists that do reviews of art, especially art that's not linked to a product. Like they always split the theater reviewers, but if you weren't running a show for 2 weeks, they wouldn't review you because it happened and it was gone.
yeah.
We only have a few people that have that power, to write about something that happened one day.
Yeah.
Hence the price of doing ephemeral performance art. But also, even funny is graphic and exploitable as my work is, that they took an existing photo of me when I still had hair and made me bald, and found the. Do you have the color picture from the session that it comes from?
Mm-hmm.
The contrast is hysterical. Yeah, I had a little marine cut.
Yeah.
The normal look on my face. So they go bought a photo from this German photographer where my face is mangled, and then they crudely Photoshop my hair off. Um, I don't know. Again, I had a bit of a humor with that.
Yeah.
It made me identify myself like what I'm doing. So I lived through that. Remember, all of this is pre-internet, pre-World Wide Web, so things kind of had a context where they came from.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't worry how far things go. I guess then I just want to talk about the private public aspect of this. Because for me, all the things in that headline are true. HIV positive, former junkie. Being out about all those things was activist for me. Also, I wasn't raised by parents and had a contentious relationship with my guardian. So when I left home, I never felt that haunting that I could be scandalized. To have a tattooed face in the early 80s was already like a antisocial, you're never going to work in a bank. I always get that. You're never going to work in a bank, or you're never going to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. What else? Anyway, I think our we'll discuss more stuff here, but I have made work that's easy to take out of context, um,
Yeah.
highly exploitable, and I've just had to do what I call steering context, writing about other people, doing more in discussions with, because I feel like all you're saying is I'm HIV positive and bleeding, but here's the root of that. Or even now, I'm not a Georges Bataille artist. That's like
Yeah.
a trigger to an inspiration for one piece, but it's not. It's not what the piece is. So
Yeah.
we have to elaborate ourselves. So from a DIY PR, make your own events perspective, and also not taking it too hard when you do get taken out or pot shot at.
Yeah. It's really easy to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me share further. There's more work here to share. There's more wonderful images. As an example of the tabloids that you were talking about. And that's just another one of like essentially the endowment for the arts were not happy with how you spent.
Well, you haven't made it till you're in the National Enquirer for that. There's also celebrity co-opting. Like I had a long ride with David Bowie using my images and making cartoons of me, and yet using another person because he never wanted to pay me. These things can eat you up, and you have to keep control of your own work, which is hard with images. Like photographs are protected, writing is protected. Your image is not.
Yeah.
So that can be problematic too, or something to think about how to keep control. I've certainly evolved in ways from wanting performance to be totally ephemeral with no documentation to working in video, say, or allowing things to be online. I have a lot of full-length things on my Vimeo channel under my name.
We'll share some of that in the chat after the discussion as well. I like that you also took control. You're a writer yourself, and you write along your work, alongside your work. Pull up this right here. Just excerpts of writing from your literature and how the lack of control and translating that into writing that context for yourself, or finding people that will do that.
This was a cover story for the LA Weekly that was reprinted in my book, but
oh shit, yeah.
fully about like the history and how it plugs into my sense of actionism, I guess, coming from the illustrated book. Also the polemic on the Walker Art Center site. I have an essay called "The Polemic of Blood." Both to expand on the topic, but also to actually steer the context, so it's not always these superficial, exploitive descriptions of who I am and where the work comes from. So it's always too neatly in a nutshell when, it's actually much more complicated than that, and sometimes open-ended how to read it.
Yeah.
You like my Roy Orbison Disneyland picture?
Baby Ron. Yeah, these are excerpts from books that you make within of your own archives as well, and writings. So we'll share that as well. Is there something else you'd like for me to pull up, Ron? We could talk about.
I think maybe we should hear from Arshia before we look at it.
Okay. Sounds good.
We'll look at some work that we've done together.
Yes, please. I have some of that here. Arshia, would you like to pull up? I would love to mention how I met Arshia's work before I met her, and I just fell in love. There's a piece called Marilyn and Negative, which is how essentially I was like met Arshia in video form, and I was like, this person, I want to be their friend so bad. So thank you so much.
Because that's a piece that I occasionally feel like I should scrub from the internet, in case my family just figures out how to Google me. But yeah, I can just kind of, I have some images to share as well. I can start by saying that my relationship to the idea of public and private is complicated, growing up in a background that really emphasized a really strong distinction between public and private, especially for women. and also a background in which the individual, which, you know, this cult of individualism and the cult of the artist is like, a very, it's the thing that media is usually centered around, but the way that, I was raised, it was, the identity of the individual was always very subject to the will of the collective. So, that's definitely infused my approach to my work, and not something that I completely, disagree with. I think you have to enable screen sharing for me, though.
Oh, I do. Huh. More. Put in remove report. I have no idea how to do that.
So I think you would go to probably preferences, maybe. I'm not totally sure.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Dual monitors recommended. Okay, I think I
Okay, now I can, yeah.
okay.
So I'm going to start with, can you see this image of
Yes.
an old favorite, one of the classics, top 40 hit? This, this, this is a depiction of the prophet on the night of the Ascension. It's a night that he took this magical being, which has really actually become very popular among the Islamic queer community. This half femme, half horse, half unicorn being called Burak. But this is an image that's really important to me, because one, you can see here that the prophet is veiled. And so in Islam, there is often a tendency to not participate in representation, specifically anthropomorphic representation. We do see the angels here, and that's like kind of, there were some rare periods where you did see some figurative drawing, but in general, it was discouraged. And I think, if you interpret that really conservatively, it's about the idea of not taking the power of the divine into your own hands. But if you think about it more metaphorically, which is how I like to think about it, it's more about the fact that things cannot actually be represented, especially things that are divine. So that's something that I think about a lot, and that I return to a lot I'm thinking through like all the different mediums I've worked in. There's a few threads that like come up, which is this desire to move towards illegibility. This is a close-up. And the other thing I love about this image is that the Burak is most often depicted. You don't see it as much in the Arab world, I feel like. But this was an icon that was really specifically visible in South Asia, in the South Asian Muslim world. And that's another thing that I'm really interested in, is kind of these indigenous repositories of knowledge as a form of resistance to kind of mainstreaming, especially when you're talking about mainstreaming of religious ideology and things like that. So illegibility is something that I think about a lot. These are some stills from my first film, Recollection, which really looked at the intersection of personal memory and official memory, and kind of the division between those two realms. The official memory was represented for me by the entomologist, the Los Angeles County entomologist, who has this practice of distilling images and examining specimens, that felt like a really good metaphor for me for how I guess this kind of like science-based approach to the world, which can be really reductive. So also through my work, I have traveled to Pakistan and India to spend time in some of the Sufi shrines, which really kind of also changed my thinking about subjectivity and moving towards like more of an interior subjectivity. This is a still from Rihla, which literally means inner spiritual journey. And for me, I mean, obviously it's kind of this refusal to be seen. I recently came across some work by Edward Glissant, who was introduced to me, and he talks a lot about the right to opacity, which is this idea, especially for post-colonial subjects, and refusing to, translate or to be didactic or to be, choosing how you're seen and choosing when not to be seen as a form of power. And I think, especially in the age of surveillance, invisibility can be really a form of power in so many ways. I'm gonna just maybe skip ahead a little bit. So many of you are familiar with Discostan, which is, shouldn't talk about it in the past tense since we will eventually return to public life someday. It's a nightclub project, but also more than that, an archive, a record label, and also a collective of artists really working to reclaim our own histories and our own knowledge. And there's always two levels of it, I feel like, for people that enter. There's people, who are kind of sharing this inside communal knowledge of taking part. And in a way, it can be a form of rewriting history in these liminal spaces. This was also where, there's a collaborative night between a few artists, and this is where Discostan, like the idea of this disco prophet kind of came into being in this playful way on the dance floor. And also as the American pinup, just kind of playing with these ideas of what is, what is power and what is taking power back. And it was interesting as I was looking at, images of the veiled prophet last night, I actually came across this series of racist balls that were happening in St. Louis. I think they went on till quite recently. It's kind of this crazy debutante ball of the veiled prophet, which is just this insane appropriation of this mythology. But it was really interesting to see how again this idea of invisibility and power is aligned, and I think that's why we see a lot of the bans on the niqab and things like that in Europe today. And then I'll just share with you one more piece, which was kind of also growing out of this veiled character. I was doing these signs up, this was around Trump's the first time he was elected. These signs up around the freeways with that collaborator, Andrew Kazakis, and we were kind of playing on the fuck Trump, no ICE signs, but they were kind of these more abstract messages. And I would put them up in English and in Urdu, and the Urdu sign would get taken down right away because the script is, invokes fear in people. It's also a great way to get your message out there anonymously to millions of people at once. So, which is something I'm also really interested in, is working outside. And I think, Ron and I obviously share this in our work, is working outside of the white cube and reaching people through more kinetic or cathartic or embodied ways. This led to a performance with a number of collaborators called the Ajnabi Milan, which means a stranger's union. We started with signs at the freeway, and then there was just this kind of procession of the strangers, kind of this surreal intervention in the middle of Hollywood, with these signs that literally say, "I was a stranger and you welcomed me," in both English and in Urdu. That's a line from the Bible, actually, which is, really ironic considering that the far right often embraces Christianity, yet there's this message of inclusion that is central to Jesus' message. So we marched through the streets with this. We marched, to a soundtrack of wedding songs, celebration songs, funeral songs. We also had part of a mix played by one of the collaborators, Sand Ninja. So yeah, it was just kind of a way to, you know, bring this invisibility as a form of power and celebration into the streets, and also kind of choose not to let our identities be known. So maybe if this will work. There's just a minute of video and then I can end with that. But if it doesn't work, please tell me, because you know what, maybe I will, I don't know if that'll work or not. I'm actually going to maybe put the link up in the chat for people that want to see it, because it sounds like it's distorting when I start to play it. But yeah, I mean, I can kind of pause there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Damn, Arshia, that's beautiful. So there's so much to unwrap within it. I think that we could start the conversation on, I suppose, subcultures. I think would be really cool to transition within that, and how there's a disappearance of subculture, as well as claiming within it and recreation of it with Disco Stan. And I would probably could talk to both of your backgrounds, between Ron's history at Club Fuck from all the way back then, and how Archie has kind of created that special space within that. And then, damn, there's so much to unwrap. Also, like your references to the veil and the power within it, I think that really came across. And this, yeah, lots to unwrap.
We watch our video first, though, our trailer.
Yes. Can we take a moment if we, Arshia, can you plug in that into the chat? We could take a minute and just watch it. Actually, you and Ron also collaborated on Cyclic, resulting in like, it's filmic as well. So that's really interesting, in contrast to like the ephemerality of like a public performance, a one-day thing.
It's site specific. It's at the Biosphere 2 in Fort, Arizona. You know, which was built as a almost idea, oh, we could live on Mars inside this closed circuit, but became quite dystopian to go visit there now, which is why I proposed that site, because it was, I could imagine having to live there, or quasi biospheres. Do you have the link?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna put that in now. Right here, Vimeo. Let's see. So I just plugged in the Vimeo for Cyclic. It was with Castles as well, correct?
Got it. Gig at Mocha Tucson, and she brought us in. They brought us in.
I also put a link up to the 1 minute. Hopefully it'll work, because it's not on my Vimeo, but.
If you'd like, we could take a minute for everyone to click onto them. It would be much easier than playing them through the Zoom. I think the Zoom is pretty messy. It's 12:36. So the earlier one with Arshia is a minute. Could just.
All right, that's okay then.
Yeah. All right. I'm not. I'm like, sorry. I'm a little nervous. Yeah.
You can't try screen sharing it. I have good luck with Vimeo on the direct.
Okay. I can screen share. 1 moment. Okay.
An industrial problem for magic. Sameness. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2.
Oops.
We were compromised, but it was fine.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that that was not me. That was my friend Fana in that
It's true.
video.
I think I could share with you your video, the link as well, and see if it plays. If like, but all right. So biosphere, you're there.
What are we
Dirt.
doing? Biosphere or subcultures first?
Okay, so much. All right, just whatever you feel. Go.
Well, I am I love going to Disco Ston, and it does remind me of yeah, underground spaces, because community happens when it's needed, and I think sometimes we feel nostalgic that there should always be one going on, but when there's a needed space, it has this energy that's sublime. I've been studying subculture since I was a teenager in the mid 70s. Why sometimes it's like life changing, and sometimes it's like going through the paces, from music scenes, BDSM scenes. I find crossover scenes always the strongest. It is the definition of from the dialectics of the sublime, to opposing. There has to be friction. Um, and everything can't come from the academy. I'll be strong about that. As a self-educated artist, I never went to school, and sometimes I'm bored to death by what comes out of the academy, especially now that performance is taught at all art schools. You have a captive audience that thinks everything's brilliant, and old-fashioned, do it in front of an audience and be heckled and suffer your way through it, to refining what you do, has a lot to say. So I'm not anti-academy. I'm certainly not anti-intellectual, but I believe in representations of work coming from different places, including real places, including I don't know, everything from early on. You had Cozy Fanny Tootie and Annie Sprinkle coming at, using sex work as a manifestation of early performance work. The same thing as music scenes. And then from the establishment, you have a pushback that, oh, that's just trendy, that's underground, that's ephemeral, that's not real art. And it's like, I think we're past the is that real art question, but you get resistance and you also get excluded because of that sometimes.
Yeah.
Or you go the other way, where it's like tokenism, where you think, why am I in this show? Because they were trying to represent the outside or the edge, whatever that means for that show.
I think that's really relatable to race as well, and the work that's how we're going to be represented, especially in this age of heightened social awareness, which is for the best. But it's a very fine line to then becoming orientalized, tokenized, as like this figure, as if it's just dangerous to even try and represent. It's not possible. Yeah, totally. Same with the shaving of your head, and even from the tabloids. That has too with publicizing though, is like making someone look, more menacing via darkening or lightening their skin or shaving their head off of the image and making them more scary.
I do have one more topic, which I feel like this is a big crossover I have with Arshia, is that you don't wait to be included or to see what you want to see. You have to produce it yourself. And whether you get you get a guest curate at the Broad Museum, which I have, or self-produce, like the last thing I worked on with Nacho Nava was called Dolores, Our Lady of the Seven Sorrows, which also included a music set from Arshia in that. And it was, what I like, which is a mix of installation, performance, music, live music. So that's a long-term practice of mine since the 80s of programming nights somewhere on various budgets, or even 24-hour happenings where you have 40 artist installations, and a very different vibe than going, to a biennial somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm a little stuttered.
Yeah.
Archie, do you have to say about who you produce and
Oh, I mean, it was definitely such an honor and pleasure to be included in both of those nights. That was a very wild night at the Broad that, just all kinds of, I think another similar thread, Ron, you brought up the sublime, but, it's the coexistence of the sublime and the profane together, and really kind of breaking down that sanctified boundary or those sterilizing boundaries. And I think that's why spaces like the nightclub, which are in the shadows, where there is so much more fluidity and possibility, are so inspiring. And in a way, like when I went to the shrines, I started to feel like I talk about it a lot, but it felt like being inside a Hieronymus Bosch painting, where you have heaven and hell and earth all on the same, it's like all on one triptych. And that's the totality of human experience. So, any space that doesn't make room for all of those things doesn't feel thriving to me. And I think that's something that, you really have created the frontier for that in your work. I don't know why I just used a expansionist metaphor, but I need to scrub my language.
But yeah, that's where the reference of Uncle Ron, the definitely paved the way, paved the for all of us. And
I was turned out at these parties in the early 80s called theoretical parties in LA, and theoreticals were produced in a really hardcore leather bar that's like a block from my house now in Silver Lake. But it was people from the like punk music scene, experimental music scene, arty farty downtown LA people, and hardcore leathermen. So you had all of these kind of groups mushing together, and in a similar and in a bit of a different way, Club Fuck was like that too. It was modern primitive people, like pierced, tattooed up, straight valley kink people, Tom of Finland House people, and then techno dance people coming together as one scene. So those disruptions within that and this kind of exhibitionistic spirit pumped it up. I have lived through a lot of eras. I grew up in an all ages era where discos were open till 6 a.m. and you could be 15 getting down on the dance floor, which I was. Then the Mies Commission report happened under Reagan, and it just became illegal to do anything like with anyone under 21 and certainly under 18. So that ended that kind of clubbing. And then the other thorn on our side, especially in California, is the alcohol beverage control. There can't be any nudity where people drink. So then they come out of like after performance art for this, which I find, yeah, it's problematic. It's hard to self-produce without selling liquor. Also to have festiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, the club. Um, so
Moment of silence for the club.
I really miss the club. I really miss Disco Stan, and it will keep going. And its spirit is still, it's still very alive, regardless of the space. Like the connection that was created there, like a creating of the memory that's like beyond physical space. Actually, where Disco Stan, it's like it's you. um, yeah. So with a moment of silence before the disco, I would love to talk about your ideas, Arshia, and writing on representation, and going a little further on that as we close further, because there's some amazing points that you made in earlier conversations about oversaturation and desensitization through that, and to quote you yourself, of seeing is not believing anymore. And that's something that you said, and I'd love to elaborate further on that, actually, as the closing remarks and such like that.
Yeah, so we live obviously in this moment, and it's really confusing and difficult, at times, to be an artist in the age of social media. But beyond being an artist, I think just being a human, because we do live in this age where everything is visible, everything is, from people being lynched on camera, whether it's, Black and brown people here by the police, or as I had just come back from India, where there was a genocide that, began to unfold, and seeing that happen in real time. And all of these facts are presented to us, and yet it's not, people still see what they want to see. So that's kind of where, this idea of seeing is not believing, which is an idea that has been in circulation, kind of, has come up for me, and just like, what does it mean to be a witness in this time? And yeah, just thinking about the hyper proliferation of information that's always hitting us, and then also just, in terms of being an artist, like this strange realm where we have to like promote ourselves, and which, yeah, doesn't feel good. So it's kind of a lot of jumbled thoughts, but
Also, is it even possible to really I don't feel like I could evoke a full performance and then share that fully via like a social media post. Like, you're just not going to get the full scope of what had happened. So it's like everything becoming so bite-sized and like out of context, and like what Ron said, it just makes it that much more easy for people to like not fully understand the layers that are within something or a project or a thing.
yeah, to not fully understand, to recontextualize, to appropriate, all of those things. And yeah, it's true, like, when you do work and you desire to work in ways that are ephemeral, and yet now that was like a lesson, that you have to document everything, and it's also just not what you want to be thinking about sometimes. So.
Yeah. I mean, it totally just kills the vibe too. Counterproductive of the vibe that we're trying to do. Yeah.
I think tech downfalls are a challenge. My main problem with social media is you get trained into self-censoring, or like the childish Facebook thing that, oh, I'm on probation for a week, now I'm on probation for a fucking month, now my account got erased. So you learn, you can show a little butt crack, you can show package under a piece of fabric. But it's not the work. Yet I'm trying to represent my work, especially on the Ron Athey artist page. And then I felt like this isn't the work. So I kept trying to like make Twitter be more alive for me. 'Cause you can show
Yeah.
pictures on Twitter. It has a lot more freedom without being involved with the Zuckerfuck.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, it's just as far as representing through video and images what your work could be. Sometimes I don't want to be forced to live in a childish world that's all bright and perfectly art directed, but it's not showing the nugget of what the work is. Because I consider my work adult work, and I don't consider a breeder centric world. I don't acknowledge that hierarchy, that's more important than my decomposing queer world at all, at a point where the planet's so massively overpopulated. Like these old precedents aren't true anymore to me, at least not in my world. So I won't do it.
Yeah. Well, you've been fighting against it your whole life. Not gonna like cave into it over social media. Yeah. Cool. Um, yeah, so like there's definitely a difference between a camera and an audience, and then translating that into publicity or press. Um,
Also in quality, like I think if you mean to make a video, it's different than if your work translates to a Twitch broadcast.
yeah,
Want to like just like throw that away. Like, you know, there's been a few events I've been involved with since lockdown,
yeah,
like the Olvera full Pink Moon opera, the Pauline Olvera nod. That was amazing to interact with a lot of people, even with the sound quality not being so great on that, and the way to switch back and forth between different people's stations. But I wouldn't want to live there, you know, and also the amount of zoomy stuff we do. It's hard to go there for me for looking at art or music on or watching a
yeah,
on. I don't want to be glued to my computer.
yeah. It's less relationship with people, and like you got a screen in between, so it's just is. Um, I do like within my work, I like to like shoot it to the wind sometimes. Where like if I'm going to do something performance in the public, I'm just going to allow whoever takes that filmic video or whatever it is. If it's that little bit, then that's how it's captured. It's that group like blurred out photo that someone took with their phone, and I screenshot it from their story, and that's the document that I got for that whole performance. Or I'll get like really specific and just like I'm making a video, like a film, like a short film.
And in the long game, the more you can keep copyright control of. Like I resent that I can't have certain photographs of my own performance.
Yeah.
You know, in the aftermath, they never tell you before, but suddenly they want $400 to use a picture of yourself. Like, why? Mine. But the same with video. Like I just think, you know, of course we never have enough money to suddenly like hire a film person and stuff, but it just has to become part of the work if you want to keep control and keep agency over your own work. Because if someone's trashy video, it ends up edited into something else. Or, you know, the short story how I ended up on the X-Files. I was on a chat show and I must have signed my life away. And then also I'm on TV. It's this like horrible channel that keeps coming on, torturing an old lady in a rocking chair. I'm not particularly arsed about it.
It's real, by the way. It's a real X-Files episode.
Well, I should have got paid. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, it's 12:57. That was about an hour. And
Yes, I mean, did you want to see if anyone had questions? Do we have time or? Also 30.
There's a direct message to me. I'm going to call it out and put it public though, is I refuse to live in a childish world. And they just love that. And a lot of hell yes. I think that was for Arshia's talking. I'm trying to find any questions. Well, if you could just plug them into the chat. Jennifer has a question. You could unmute if you'd like, or just plug it into the chat and we'll read it out loud.
I'll unmute for a second. Hi.
Hi.
So I was wondering how you decide what to address and what not to address and what ways to address commentary about your work publicly or about yourself, and how you kind of like navigate that and how that changes over time too. I think that's a thing also. And this is for all of you guys.
I mean, I can give a brief answer to that. I think my work confuses a lot of people because a lot of times there isn't that much context given or translation given. So I think a lot of people just don't talk about it because they don't know what to make of it. And then on the other hand, I have to sometimes deal with kind of more reductive or Orientalist interpretations. So for me, it's a lot of just kind of articulating and talking against that when, and it's just through conversations and through whenever I have a chance to have an interview to kind of keep restating it and hope it will land.
I went through different cycles on this. That after being, kind of wrongly pointed out that I was throwing AIDS blood on people in the 90s, every profile on me was like, he's, actually he's a really nice guy. And so then it became this like non-malignant, non-threatening, like nice big bald-headed baby instead of this gnarly AIDS monster. So I just try to give a bigger picture, and also share some of my research that kind of goes against just this simplistic shock jock factor of things, or boring questions about does it hurt. Just to try to make it a bigger, smarter conversation, and not assume that everybody's stupid. Like actually, it's okay to go over someone's head a little bit. Not to say like everyone doesn't have to have read everything, but it's okay to talk more than general. Yeah, and I don't know, I've been under attack a few times and not taking it personal. The only way out is through finding a logic. Even if I have to go back to the books and read different takes of theory and philosophy just to kind of back it up. I feel like the work's worth it because I don't know. I don't make all that work to be misunderstood by everyone. If they want to hold me up to that sort of thing, they're going to anyway. And then it's not a discussion. It's just an attack or an abuse. But whenever I do have the opportunity for input, maybe it's why since early on, I do a lot of after talks after performances that very night, like within a half hour to an hour afterwards, for people who need to process with you. It's worth it.
Yeah.
I was always amazed by that, Ron, though, because I can't imagine switching from especially the performance that you do to talking to people in that way. So that's a service.
Most like there's no barriers. I'm not defensive. I'm just ready to like get real, and I know how to shut people down that are being knuckleheads or assholes. So I feel like it's a nice thing for me. Otherwise, I feel haunted by the other you went into.
It feels like definitely like there's a practice to that too, like building that skill to even be able to do that. Because I mean, after a performance, I for the most part want to like hide. I'm sweating. I'm like, please let me vomit and shit in the corner. So it's like, so it's really it's a real skill to even develop that I can imagine handle like that per se. But
To put it out there, right? Like
yeah.
Or sometimes I'm giddy, like almost ridiculous. Like
Hi too. You get that like close.
I made it through the other side, and something happened, something was realized or conjured or channeled. I use all those kind of spirit descriptions in it.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of time, you guys, there's 2 more questions in the chat there. One from Nathan, and then Daniel has a question as well. And then it looks like Addie as well, and then maybe we call it.
That sounds great. Nathan, would you like to say your question? That's been going well. If you'd like to unmute.
Hey, I can unmute. Yeah, I was just wondering, I do mostly like abstract and photography work, but I've been wanting to do more queer imagery and representation in my work, but I'm like having a hard time making the leap. Like, do I just start all new social media stuff for that? Do I, like, how do you decide to go out into that adult world, and like, do you segregate your previous work? Like, what is your recommendation in there?
I'm all for alter egos and pen names. I'm just gonna leave that there. I wish I thought of it earlier in my life.
Yeah.
Cool. I mix spiritualist performances like automatic writing with post porn and kind of opera non-lingual vocal training exercises. So I guess I see it as one mess, and how everything has a relationship to the other.
Right, because then it feels like a more authentic, like that's my battle, is like, do I just try to be authentic, mash it all together, or do I like create separate projects? And that's what kind of gets me like anxious about even starting it.
You have to start somewhere and see if it feels right for your work.
Totally. Well,
now I'm
thanks.
doing great. You take it like a query or an exploration into it, and if it's you, it'll keep growing, and if that's something you learn by putting your feet in it, fine.
Totally. Well, thanks for that inspiration and info.
Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that too, is to not underestimate your audience in that way too, is that that's something I realized just recently, a few months ago, is that I always feel scared to like that I'm complicating, I'm too complicated and layered for people. But someone screamed at me and shook me and said, there's room for all of this in our heads. And I'm like, yes, please, thank God. There is room for all of it in our heads. So not everyone's gonna get it, but some people will make room for all of it and try and unwrap it all. That's my thoughts. I have one more question. There's one more questions. Athey, how does the public feedback
Hi, I'm unmuting myself. I just wanted to say thank you guys for doing this. It's so informative, and it's so awesome to see your work and your catalog and just have a conversation about it. And I think performance art is such a powerful modality of just art in general, because I feel like the paradox of a powerful performance kind of paired with a space, like creating a space of vulnerability, is so important to kind of translate. And it's also very difficult to translate into the public realm. But I was wondering if, through your experience and all of your different performances, has public feedback or commentary of your work inform specific performances, if they have done so at all? And how do you take that public response to your work into future performances?
that one's for you, Ron.
I'll dive in that, because I've gotten amazing feedback that, ranging from constructive criticism to really getting a corner of the work that I didn't see clearly, and it'll continue research for me. I'm one of the naughty performance artists that calls my work a show. So
Yeah.
and enthusiasm and energy feeds me. So maybe not to specifically do or not do something, but it gives me a sense of timing, I guess, with the piece. So as long as it's not a judgy feedback, I always get something from it, and it starts clarifying what happened, because I'm not deciding this is what I'm going to do and this is what it means. I'm just putting it out there, and I tend to do things for a few years and keep changing it, so it's quite beneficial.
Nice, thank you.
Daniel, you could unmute yourself if you have a question as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was just curious, do you feel it necessary to draw a line or set a boundary between personal and political works? Like, does what's going on contemporary, like what's on the news, what's going on, does it interrupt your muse or does it add to it? You know, that was yeah.
You want to grab that, Arshia?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I necessarily directly respond to, you know, things that are happening politically. But, you know, just in the sense of whatever identity or body that you're in, and being public, you know, in that way, that's already a political statement. Disco Stand, for example, was kind of one of the first clubs post 9/11 to really coalesce around identities and immigrant bodies that were like seen as, you know, terrorists, basically. So to play like Afghan, Iraqi, Pakistani music really loud in the middle of downtown, or parade with that music through the streets, is in a way, you know, kind of articulating a political statement. But I don't really directly necessarily, I mean, I actually kind of don't even really watch the news anymore, to be honest, because it's just constant circus of, I don't know, ridiculousness from every side.
I wouldn't do it directly. Like, I could never make a piece that names like Donald Trump. But like when I was making the Judas Cradle with Juliana Snapper, suddenly those photos from Abu Ghraib were released, and making an opera that's centerpiece as a medieval torture device couldn't go on without absorbing the horror of that moment. So, and not direct words, but also quotes from Jean Genet, who from Prisoner of Love, which is indirectly related to that. I guess in general, as a person, I do archetype work. So when something's happening, like I feel encroaching fascism, you know, I back up to George Bataille and the Secret Society, like World War II anti-fascist movements, to overlay it with something contemporary. But yeah, that's the only way I consider myself a political artist at all. I don't have message as much as I have commentary.
I guess the last thing I wanted to say about that is, you know, in line with what Ron is saying, I guess just on a personal level, I really feel like change isn't affected through the band-aid of a particular regime, party, even set of laws. I think you really have to shift things at a subliminal, subconscious, and storytelling level. And so, like Ron, I mean, that's a beautiful way to put it, working at the level of archetypes and mythology, to me, is way more profound and potent than trying to address a particular historical moment, which is ultimately always cyclic. To make a bad pun. Dun, dun.
Are you gonna bless us, Zeina?
Oh yeah. All right. So that was the great way to end it. Thank you so very much For an ending prayer, this program is sponsored in part by the Department of Cultural Affairs, Los Angeles. And please visit www.1111acc.org for more info about 1111 and check out their other upcoming discussions. And please join us next time within this speaker series. There's going to be Yasmin Nasser Diaz and Nujan Bagher, and they're joining us this Tuesday, November 10th from 3 to 4.
Thank you for having us today.
So very, very much.
Ron.
Have fun in San Francisco.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up and showing through. This is going live on YouTube, so you could check out how we, and did our thing on the YouTube after this to watch again. And feel free to email me, and I'll send you if there's specific texts that you're like, I want to read that text, like Edward Salt. Let me know, and I'll talk to Arshia and try to connect that with you. Okay. Cool. All right. And bye-bye. Scene. End meeting for. Thank you, everyone.
Great job.
Thanks, Erin. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Still live
Thanks
on-
everyone for joining us.
all right.
Told you kill it, Z.
It's really nerve-wracking pressing the end meeting, but I'm just gonna press one.